Right, let's see. Everything's okay. Just refreshing the screen and seeing if it's live here. Yeah, it seems like it. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here, friends. This is my first live stream finally on my channel. You wouldn't believe how we managed to do this today. But where there's a will, there's a way. I'm glad to see there are some people in the chat. Thank you, friends, for being here. This is awesome. And as you can see, I've got some special brothers here today, and you may already be aware of them. So we've got Brother Thaddeus and Brother Lloyd, and they both have their own channels. And so what we decided to do this time was to actually host a live stream on my channel. And hopefully this will help us gain more momentum so more people are aware of this really remarkable content that Brother Lloyd has been sharing with us now. And of course, today's topic is going to be regarding the Khilafah. Because friends, so many of you who've been watching my channel are aware of the Islamic Caliphate that I talk about often in relation to Bible prophecy. However, today I was going to take a slightly different angle. Today, Brother Lloyd is going to do a presentation and show you exactly what the Khilafah means to the Christians, the Jews, and the non-Muslims, and what it really would look like. And this is going to be from their own text, their own sources, the Islamic sources. So I really encourage you, friends, to grab a notepad, take notes, and let's be nice in the comments section. Let's be more intelligent, because we've had some really ludicrous insanity of comments when we were doing these live streams before from some Muslim viewers. So I really encourage a really good rapport in the chat down here, and just show us some support. Hit the like button, of course, share this video as well. But firstly, let me introduce you to Brother Thaddeus and also Brother Lloyd. So over to you. Who wants to go first?
Thaddeus.
I'll go ahead and go. So my name is Thaddeus, and my channel is Reasoned Answers. I'm a devout Christian. Nominally been a Christian my entire life. Really became a Christian as a teenager when I accepted Jesus as my personal Lord and Savior. My channel is a combination of Christian apologetics and Islamic polemics, and I also do a number of videos looking at conversion stories from Islam to Christianity. All the previous videos in this series, which can be found on my channel under Islam's Apologetics.
Thank you so much, Thaddeus. Yeah, that was a really, really good, interesting series. Over to you, Brother Lloyd.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the channel once again. I'm glad that you guys have hosted me and allowed me to spread my message. I lived 11 years in the Middle East. I spent a lot of time working, especially in conflict areas. That experience led me to start to really research Islam, and I now study the Sharia, and on my channel I discuss Islamic law. So I dig into the very obscure Islamic text, especially its legal text, as well as the biographies of Muhammad. And I've been putting out a number of videos discussing the actual law. So I don't focus on the Quran, I focus on how the Quran and the Hadith are expressed within the Sharia definitively, so that one doesn't go in circles on the Sunnah and the Quran as we are typically doing, but actually show what the actual doctrine and what the bedrock of Islam is built on.
And a lot of your content that you've been showing us in the recent sort of presentations, a lot of it is new to me for a start, and I am an ex-Muslim. So I really value the research that you've been doing, Lloyd, and I hope that our viewers today really do sort of take heed and really listen, because there's some new material. And this is because often when we're dealing with Islam, talking about Islam on the apologetic side of things, a lot of it is very repetitive, I find, but very educational, however. So I think today's presentation is going to be quite telling. And also, friends, you may have remembered from my videos, I talk about how Islam, within its own belief system, it's obligatory for them to establish the caliphate. It's a part of their Islamic, let's say, vision, their goal for the end times. Because again, remember, in their creed, they have to believe in their version of the last day. And what would that look like if that was so, if there was such a thing as a caliphate? And I think, Lloyd, today you're going to show us what it means to be subjugated under Islam and what a dhimmi status and jizya tax system really means. And it's not nice, you guys. So be prepared. It's not pleasant.
Yeah, as we discussed, we should tell the audience that the plan is to do 2, maybe 3 episodes on the subject. I intend to go into some depth on the Sharia. There should be 2 episodes. So today will be the first one, and the second one I will really dive into depth into the Sharia. So we will start and define a number of terms. But also what I do is to try to equip people with the facts so that they can push back against the incessant, and I'm going to call them lies of Islamic apologists. The thing is, if these were errors, we could then show them their own highly authoritative sources, their ultimate sources, and they would then say, oh, sorry, I made a mistake. I stand corrected. These are my sources. This is the Sharia. These are the major scholars. Yes, this is what it is. This is what the ulama are saying. But they don't. They will turn around. They will deny their sources. So the aim is that so these are not errors. These are simply just lies and propaganda. So now I'm giving people the tools and the information to refute and to push back against the lies of these Islamic apologists, and for us to develop our polemics based on facts, based on references and citations that we can all look at, books. And I provide the links to all the books so that everything is there from their own ultimately best sources. And what's interesting is they will never use these sources themselves, because the arguments they're making are refuted by their own major scholars and by their own authoritative books.
Yeah, and also with the information that you provide, it's important that people remember, especially those of us who call ourselves Christians, it's always bear that in mind, that there is a blindness over these people groups. They don't see in the spirit like you and I do, but keep that in mind. But we have to deal with this bravely, friends. We've got to tackle it. And I think well, how do you say it, like when we go on the offensive with polemics, you've really got to be brave enough to do it, because there's some things that I think Lloyd has been displaying in his presentations that we haven't heard before, and it's very offensive. It's offensive to me as a believer in Jesus Christ, and the more I'm learning about how Muslims and the people at the top really view us, it's informative. I'm better informed, you know.
Yeah, let me put these out bluntly. I mean, fine, I'm no stranger to controversy. Muhammad is the Islamic Jesus, and I will be discussing this in detail as we go through, because I've read these books, and it is very, very clear, and it's something that Muslims don't talk about, but these are things that we have to start learning. And it is Islamic orthodoxy to hate Christians, to hate Jews, to deny the Bible. And Islam is to its core anti-Christian, to its core. It is anti-Christian. And for instance, there are 2 Jesuses in Islam. One is the Islamic version of Jesus taken from the Gnostic heretical gospels. 2 is the Christian Jesus, who they view as an insult to God because he was beaten and spat on and bloodied and so on. And they claim that the Bible was corrupted and edited. And this is Islamic orthodoxy. This has made its way into the Sharia. The Sharia says in section U 3.4 in the Reliance, the world's most popular Sharia manual, that the Christians and the Jews have edited the Bible. They've stripped out all reference to the original Jesus. Our Jesus is Satan, the Antichrist, and their Jesus is the original one. However, Jesus's job was to foretell the coming of the King Messiah, who is Muhammad. Jesus is the Messiah, small m, whose job was to foretell the coming of the King Messiah, the Shiloh from Genesis 49:10, Muhammad.
You see, now for an ex-Muslim, I've never heard of that before. And
No one has.
to know that this is their part of their tradition, they really believe this. But
Muhammad is greater than Moses. He's greater than Jesus. And Islam abrogates, in fact, Abraham, Jesus, Moses, David, Ezekiel, Daniel, they were all Muslims. This is part of their traditions. You will find most of this in the Sirah. This is not in the Quran. So you have to go through the Sirah and other works by their major scholars. The Tafsir are much more important than people realize, as is the Sirah still.
Which is, again, like we said earlier on in the previous video, that Islam is not like Christianity, where we have the Bible as the foundation and the one book. But in Islam,
Correct.
it's not just the Quran. We can't compare it to Christianity. And I
No,
think a lot of people do just focus on the Quran, and it's
no.
not the
The
case. This
Quran
why
is
they
almost
get away
irrelevant
with,
in that
you know,
sense. No, the Quran
deflection.
is almost an irrelevance. The Quran requires, while it is important, right? It is interpreted through hundreds of other books.
Yeah, it's
So
not their basis.
you
Right.
cannot do a one-to-one correlation Quran to Bible. It does not work. Quran doesn't work like that. And Islam is not Christianity with beards and funny thobes. So
Yeah.
but anyway, let's get back into
Let's
this. Let's get into the
start.
topic.
Go ahead.
So these are topics I will be discussing in future. I've been doing all the research work. I have a ton of different subjects I could cover. I mean, enough for dozens of shows at this point. So today we're going to talk about what happens if you've been subjugated under a caliphate. You've been attacked because Islam is a religion of war. You've been attacked. They've conquered your territory, and now you become a dhimmi. So we will talk about that. I'll share my screen, Thaddeus. Okay,
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's share it.
okay. So, right. Has my screen come up?
Yes.
Okay, so I will be focusing on the right here. I will occasionally refer to some PDF documents, and I will also be soon I will pull up a PowerPoint presentation. On the left-hand side, this is a preview of some work that I am busy on. I'm calling it at the moment, Muhammad, the Divine Messiah, Partner of Allah. Hate me if you want. I just wanted to let you know, this is just a hadith. I love starting with little fun facts about Islam. This is a hadith. I heard the messenger of Allah saying, do not kill your children secretly, for the milk with which a child is suckled while his mother is pregnant overtakes the horseman and throws him from his horse. I think this is critical knowledge that we all need to know.
Yeah, I mean, if we didn't have this divine guidance here, we would not know to not kill our own children.
Yeah, for the milk. Otherwise, it'll overtake the horseman and throw him from his horse. So yeah, I'll be working on this and sharing a lot more of Islam, this kind of critical information. So let me dig in. I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint. We're going to begin. Right, so subjugated under Islam, dhimmis and the jizya. More fun facts about Islam. Because I'm interested in polemics and I'm interested in rebutting the dishonest arguments and the ignorant arguments we get from Muslim apologists. In fact, I'm trying to teach Muslims Islam. That is partly what I consider 50% of my task is to teach Muslims Islam, and the other 50% is to teach non-Muslims Islam, especially to empower apologists for Christianity. Now, and I want to create polemicists, not just apologists. So puberty, they always lie about puberty. Puberty is when a girl turns 6. Puberty is when a girl turns 9. No, puberty applies to a person after the first wet dream or upon becoming 15 in lunar years. Right? This is from the Sharia. This is from Reliance of the Traveler, the world's most popular, the world's most famous, well-known, most owned Sharia manual. Puberty applies to a person after the first wet dream or upon becoming 15, not 9, not 6, 15. However, it goes on, or when a girl has her first menstrual period, or she falls pregnant. So if a girl falls pregnant at 8, well, she was mature enough to say that she was having puberty.
Wait, so that's really interesting, actually, because that explicitly says that sex is allowed before puberty.
Yes.
She couldn't be falling pregnant if she wasn't having sex.
Yeah, exactly. And if she falls pregnant when she's having sex, when she's 8 years old, then, well, yeah, she was a woman, right?
I guess so.
That's so sick. That's sick. Read between the lines. Isn't that disgusting? My goodness.
Oh, there's lots more like this. There's plenty more. I read this stuff. Seriously, I read this stuff. Look, the Quran is 150,000 words, of which, I mean, I make a joke and I say the Quran is 12 pages long. But honestly, that's not really a joke. The Quran has been abrogated. It's all,
right.
Where you find all this information is in the Sharia. The Sharia, this manual is over 1,000 pages long, right? The Hidayah that I'm going to come to soon is something like 4,000 pages long.
Well, if the Quran was enough, there would be no need for those thousands of pages, right?
Yeah, correct. You wouldn't need 30 volumes of Bukhari for a start. right? You wouldn't need 100,000 hadith, but let's move on. So the indemnity, so a few points, but this is relevant here. This one is actually relevant. The indemnity for the death or injury of a woman is 1/2 the indemnity paid for a man. The indemnity paid for a Jew or Christian is 1/3 of the indemnity paid for a Muslim. And for a Zoroastrian, it's 1/15 that of a Muslim. This is the value of a non-Muslim in Islam, right? Just make a note of that. This is a legal statement. Now, again, this is also critical knowledge because we're going to come back to this. Captives in Islam may be killed. Captives of war may be killed. Now, in Western law, this is a crime against humanity. It is a war crime. But section 0914, when an adult male is taken captive, the caliph considers the interests of Islam and the Muslims and decides between the prisoner's death, slavery, release without paying anything, or ransoming him in exchange for money or for a Muslim captive held by the enemy. If the prisoner becomes a Muslim before the caliph chooses any of the 4 alternatives, he may not be killed. One of the other 3 alternatives is chosen. And just as an aside, it is permissible in jihad to cut down the enemy's trees and destroy their dwellings. So those Islamic apologists, please stop telling us that you guys have wonderful rules of war, because I could do a whole show on that and I'd show that you're lying. So make a note, right, of this. These are the rules of a prisoner of war, because a dhimmi is a prisoner of war. So we're going to be talking about jizya, right? Technically, it's called a capitation tax because it's known as a head tax. A head tax is also known as a poll tax. But of course, if you don't pay it, it becomes a decapitation tax. And I'm not kidding about that. So taxes sound harmless, but okay, we will continue. So the point is we're going to explain what jizya is, and we will explain the meaning of Quran 9:29. So we will see, look, you've got one little verse, it's like 50 words, and you will discover there are hundreds of pages written about this, literally hundreds. And we're going to cut through that. We're going to go to the prime material and show you the exegesis of this. And it goes, fight against those who have been given the scripture, the Jews and the Christians, who believe not in Allah nor the last day, and forbid not that which Allah hath forbidden by his messenger, and they follow not the religion of Islam, and do not submit themselves to Allah through confession of the Tawhid, until they pay the tribute readily, standing from hand to hand, being brought low, abased. You could read this as humiliated, but you've read this before. You've read multiple versions of this. Now, this is from the Hidayah. This is the most famous Hanafi fiqh manual. It's about several thousand pages of law. The Prophet has declared that capitation tax is not incumbent upon Muslims. Capitation tax is a punishment inflicted upon infidels on account of their infidelity, whence it is termed jizya, which is derived from jizya, meaning retribution.
Wow. So it's more than just a second-class citizen tax. It's much more than that.
You're a prisoner of war, and there are reasons for paying this. I'm going to have to set a lot of background during this episode, and in the second one, I will dig deeper into the Sharia. But right now, I've got to set a lot of background information. So the Hidayah is the Hanafi Sharia manual. It is their prime Sharia manual. So you're a conquered subject. You're a dhimmi. You're a prisoner of war. So this is chapter 11 from the Reliance of the Traveler. Non-Muslim subjects of the Islamic State. The reason the Reliance is so popular is that it is a single volume Sharia manual. Basically, it's a summary of all the best of Islamic law compiled into a single volume. So it's convenient. It's easy to carry. It's recommended for everyone to have one. Things like the Hidayah are 4 volumes, thousands of pages. It's bulky, it's big, so. Section 011.1, a formal agreement of protection. Just like the mafia makes protection agreements with people who live in areas that the mafia controls. If you don't pay the protection, there will no longer be protection because they are protecting you from themselves. Is made of citizens who are Jews, Christians, there are other groups as well, but we'll restrict ourselves to this for now. Such an agreement may not be effective to those who are idol worshippers, pagans, or atheists. And also, as for the pseudo-scriptures of cults that have appeared since Islam, such as the Sikhs, the Baha'is, the Mormons, they neither are nor could be a book, since the Quran is the final revelation. Just so you know, if you're a Mormon or a Baha'i, they don't like you either. So such an agreement is only valid when the subject peoples, and remember, subject, they don't mean people who are the subjects of the queen, they mean people who are subjected to subjugation. They follow the rules of Islam, those mentioned below, and those involving public behavior and dress. And they pay the non-Muslim poll tax, the jizya. And again, it's a contract. So you're looking at lawyers again. If you thought the Pharisees were nitpicking on law, good grief, you guys should read the Sharia. Now, the non-Muslim poll tax, the minimum non-Muslim poll tax is 1 dinar. There is no maximum, right? Typically, what they do is they take half your income for the year. Typically, the value is 50% of your income. Now, notice I've marked this in red. It is collected with leniency and politeness. Remember this, because we're going to come back to this, because the author here, his name is Nuh Hamim Keller, is lying to you. If he's listening, you were lying here when you translated this, because this is contradicted by every other source.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's giving his opinion, you know. 50%, that's lenient.
No, so look, I mean, I'm pretty bold with the things I say, but I've done the research, I've got the research, and this is not backed up by any source that I've read, not one. So what you need to be careful is all of these English translations are, you've got to double and triple and quadruple check them. You've got to be very careful. Any questions so far? Any comments? Anything of relevance?
We've got, let's see here. There were some really interesting comments earlier. I think people are just shocked at this revelation, especially what you mentioned earlier regarding Muhammad and just the miracles surrounding his birth.
Oh, I just got started.
I mean, that would be another topic on its own, wouldn't it? A no particular subject.
Oh, no, wars for slavery because it was meant to wean us. Oops, no, slavery is, in fact, if you read the introduction to the Hidayah, Marcus, thanks for coming on. If you read the introduction of this Sharia manual, the Hidayah, it states that 70% of the Sharia is about slavery.
It's slavery and then it's apartheid. Marcus Tambek wrote, so in essence, living as a non-Muslim, a dhimmi, under Sharia is like a civil form of imprisonment. It really is apartheid.
Oh, yeah. I should do a show on apartheid and tell you how much propaganda that was. The whole story of South African apartheid, and I will argue with anybody on this. It's so much propaganda. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm South African. I lived there. I grew up under it. But believe me, most of what you were told is 99.8% lies. So, but that's a show for a different day. So, yeah, ask him about what is the point of dhimmitude. Okay, so okay, I'll read those later. Okay, so let me continue. So, non-Muslim subjects are obliged to comply with Islamic rules, right? So they are distinguished from Muslims in dress. They must wear a wide cloth belt called the zimna. They are not greeted with salam alaikum. They are not greeted with salam alaikum. They must keep to the side of the street. Other Sharia manuals will tell you they must keep to the narrowest part of the street, and they must keep to the worst side of the street with all the potholes and the rocks that's most uneven. They may not build higher than or as high as the Muslims' buildings, though if they acquire a tall house, it is not burned down. They are forbidden to ring church bells. You guys ever heard the azan going off at 4 o'clock in the morning?
Right, yeah.
Or to recite the Torah or the gospel, the Evangel, aloud. Nor are they to make public displays of their feast days, and they are forbidden to build new churches. Because Islam is tolerant and the religion of peace, with a piece of you here and a piece of you there.
So intrusive.
Yeah, so stop me if anything comes up that anyone wants to chat about. So if non-Muslim subjects of the Islamic State refuse to conform to the rules of Islam or to pay the non-Muslim poll tax, then their agreement with the state has been violated. Section 01111, when a subject's agreement with the state has been violated, the caliph chooses between the 4 alternatives mentioned above in connection with prisoners of war.
We have a subscriber here, Lloyd, called, I love the name, Goat Ate Aisha's Quran. He calls himself. ISIS forced the Christians in Iraq and Syria to dhimmi status, and many were forced to leave. That's true. That's what
Yeah,
they
they
did.
signed. They literally signed a piece of paper, the Pact of Umar. They literally signed an agreement. It was a paper contract they had to sign. So understand, you're a dhimmi. Now they always talk about, but we protect the Jews and the Christians. There's a word that describes. There's a word you say in response to that, which I can't use on this channel, but you know what it is. Okay. No, you're a prisoner of war. Wartime rules apply to you. You're an enemy of the state. Right.
Even if Christians and Jews have somewhat better status, it's only in comparison to everyone else, atheists and people of other
Who get
religions
killed.
that are just killed outright.
Yeah, exactly.
So the mercy is that you're allowed to stay alive. Wow, so merciful.
Oh, they define that mercy. We'll get into this. As we get into this, if we have the time to get deeper into the Daya, they explain all of this. There is no confusion. And if Muslims disagree, these are your own sources, and B, bring me another Sharia manual. Don't tell me it's not in the Sunnah. Nonsense. Bring me the Sharia. That's the definitive ultimate law. Bring me Sharia verses that contradict me. Please, please. Dying to see those. So let's look at the Encyclopedia of Islam. As I've discussed on the previous show, the Encyclopedia of Islam, to buy a copy costs $36,000 plus an additional $1,300 per year license fee. Okay, this is $36,000 a year to get this book. All right, and they speak of the dhimma, the term used to designate the sort of indefinitely renewed contracts for which the Muslim community accords, oh, it's so beautifully, hospitality and protection to members of other religions on condition of their acknowledging the domination of Islam. So the beneficiaries, you're a beneficiary, that's so nice, thank you, of the dhimma are called dhimmis, and they're referred to as the al-dhimma, the people of the dhimma. Right, so remember, yeah?
You gotta like that condition there, that they'll be merciful as long as you admit that they are dominating you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's ludicrous. Talk about intimidation. I mean, of course people would do that when they got the sword on their neck. This is not peace. Islam is not peace.
Right, so of course this comes from fight those who do not believe in Allah, fight against them until they pay the tribute out of their hand and are utterly subdued. Religion of peace, right? If you can show me something in the Sharia that says Allah loves the Allah loves the non-Muslim, right? Please send it. So, Encyclopedia of Islam. Muhammad is known to have first tried to integrate the principal Jewish groups as Medina into a loose organization, and then he opposed them violently. The essential Quranic text is now, this thing is referring to a different, the Quran from this version of the book, which is version 2, dating from like the 1930s or something. Oddly enough, the Quran is numbered differently than the Quran today. Here they mean 929, but they're showing 924, which means the Quran it was a different Quran back then, which is very interesting. All of their references are off by a few verses. Fight those who do not believe until they pay the jizya, which would imply that after they'd come to pay, there was no longer reason for fighting them.
Mm-hmm.
So they talk about the jizya, right? And this is a conventional legal term with emotive intent for what was in fact the tribute or land revenue paid to a paramount power. And dues are demanded from Jews and Christians for the non-adoption of Islam. Now, the encyclopedia is pretty general, but as we dig into the Sharia, you're going to see, I've got about 45 pages of detailed information that is written about this in the Sharia, and we're going to uncover this and expose this, and you're going to see exactly what they think of you and what they will do to you if they are dominant, if they start to impose the Sharia fully.
Right.
So,
this is why they hide
certain
it. Of
agreement-
course, this is what they don't want us to know.
Right. So let me go on. So just so, by the way, an aside, Islam always casting the first stone. This happens to be the next law. After in the Reliance of the Traveler, once they finish the dhimmi laws, they jump to this. And it says the penalty for fornication or sodomy. The legal penalty is obligatorily imposed upon anyone who fornicates or commits sodomy. If they've reached puberty or they are sane and they commit the act voluntarily, no matter whether the person is a Muslim, non-Muslim, subject of the Islamic State, a non-Muslim subject of the Islamic State. That means a dhimmi, or someone who has left Islam. If the offender, blah, 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 he or she is stoned to death. The penalty consists of being, so if the offender is not someone with the capacity to remain chaste, then the penalty consists of being scourged, which is whipped or hit with a stick 100 stripes. People die from this. A significant number of them die from this punishment. A pregnant woman is not stoned until she gives birth and the child can suffice with the milk of another woman. That's Islamic mercy.
Very merciful.
Yeah. Allah knows
There's
best, right?
Gabriel made a comment. Jizya is similar to the offer you will not refuse.
Exactly. It is exactly that. Precisely. It is mafia. So, jizya, collected with dignity. So let's have a look. I'm going to bring up some notes of my own in a moment. But for instance, these are from my collected notes. Remember that passage that says the jizya is collected with dignity. So let's read. The honor of Islam lies in insulting kufr and kafirs. That's non-Muslims. That means you. One who respects the kafirs dishonors the Muslims. The real purpose of levying jizya on them is to humiliate them to such an extent that they may not be able to dress well and to live in grandeur. They should remain terrified and trembling. It is intended to hold them under contempt and to uphold the honor and the might of Islam. This is Sufi Saint Ahmad Sirhindi in letter number 163. Religion of peace. Repeat after me.
Just sounds like the Antichrist beast system to me. Just it's like all over it.
Yeah. Now, the most protected and respected of all non-Muslims are the dhimma, the people of the book. Dhimmi is derived from an Arabic root that means guilt or blame. And there are safeguards that can be extended to protect the blameworthy. Now, they use lovely euphemisms, right? Now, a hypocrite is considered Muslim in name only. And a hypocrite is someone who is unwilling to wage or fund holy war. That's a Muslim hypocrite, someone who will not. So one of the main meanings of a hypocrite in Islam is someone unwilling to wage or fund holy war, jihad. And jizya is applied to non-Muslims for the very same reason. That is why jizya, one of the reasons jizya, so that we can fund the continuation of the jihad. So the Quran says that true believers fight and are ruthless to unbelievers, right? So it is an order for Muslims that they should not give such leeway to the non-Muslims, right? And that they should not greet them first nor yield the way for them. That is Jamia Tirmidhi, which is compiled by Imam Hafiz, right? So from their major sources, Jamia Tirmidhi, that's volume 3, 19, we start to learn that in normal conditions, when Muslims are in power and they are not living as a minority, they are not under any compulsion or subjugation. It is an order. They must not give leeway to non-Muslims and not greet them first. So now we're talking about Al-Ghazali, who is the #1 Islamic scholar after the death of Muhammad. He became the #1. He is regarded as what's called the Hujjat al-Islam. He is the man who basically, he defined the Sharia. He defined the orthodoxy of Islam, right? The title Hujjat Islam is about someone who's the renewer of the faith, and this makes him the preeminent scholar in Islam. So Al-Ghazali advised on vanquished non-Muslim dhimmis, one must go on jihad or raids at least once a year. You may use a catapult against them, non-Muslims, when they're in a fortress, even if among them are women and children. You can kill the women and the children. You may set fire to them. You may drown them. If a people of the book, Jews and Christians, is enslaved, his marriage is automatically annulled. You may cut down their trees. You must destroy their useless books. Jihadists may take as booty whatever they decide, right? This is from the Waqjiz dating to 1101 AD. Jihadis may steal as much food as they need. And as regards to dhimmis, they are not permitted to display their wine or church bells. Their houses may not be higher than the Muslims, no matter how low the Muslim houses are. The dhimmi may not ride an elegant horse or a mule. He may ride a donkey if the saddle is made of wood. He may not walk on the good part of the road. Dhimmis must wear an identifying patch, even women, and dhimmis must hold their tongue.
So this is a really concerning thing for me when we see populations of Muslims in Western nations and how they want to be the dominant community within that region, right?
Yeah.
This is what they're thinking, basically. We
Yeah.
need to make our presence be known.
Yes, Al-Ghazali viewed non-Muslim dhimmis as a typical Muslim theologian and jurist of that era. So Al-Muqtadi, the Baghdad caliph, had given power to his vizier, Abu Shuja, who required each male Jew should wear a yellow badge on his headgear. This might sound very, very familiar from the subjugation of the Jews under Nazi Germany. And a piece of lead hanging around his neck inscribed with the word dhimmi to signify they had to pay the poll tax. Jews had to wear girdles around their waists. Further, he imposed two signs on Jewish women. They had to wear a red shoe and a black shoe, and a small brass bell on her neck or shoe to announce the separation of Jewish from Gentile women. He then assigned cruel Muslim men to spy upon Jewish women to oppress them with curses, humiliation, and spite. The Gentile population mocked all the Jews, and unfortunately, Jews were ill-treated by Christians as well. The church has a lot to answer for in terms of their treatment of Jews. And the mob and their children beat up the Jews in Baghdad. When a Jew died who had not paid the poll tax, the jizya, the Gentiles did not permit burial. However, I will say that even the Christians then had to do this, or they themselves would become the target of the caliphate. The dhimmi is obliged not to mention Allah or his apostle, which is why they attack us in the comment section. We as non-Muslims should not be talking about Islam. Jews and Christians must pay the jizya, and the dhimmi must hang his head while the official takes hold of his beard and hits the dhimmi on the bone beneath his ear, the mandible. That's Al-Ghazali. Right. Now, let's look at one of the sirat of Muhammad, the origins of the Islamic State, the Kitab Futuh al-Buldan, however the heck you say that. And it says here, you have to sell your children and wives in order to pay the poll tax.
Oh, wow.
More mercy there. If you don't have enough money, don't worry, you can sell your family into slavery.
Yeah, exactly that. Are there any questions that are coming through the comments?
Oh, there's so many excellent comments down here. I need to scroll up. Let me find that comment. One moment. It was by the Dashing Rogue. The root word for mafia is Arabic. Just wanted to throw that out there. And
Right.
it meant to be exempted.
Good grief. That's probably something to look into. Yeah, so its people came to terms stipulating that their lives, property, and children be safe, right? Agreeing to pay the poll tax. So they came to terms to keep their lives, their property, and their children safe, and they agreed to pay the tax. At last, they capitulated, agreeing to pay the poll tax or evacuate their lands, to give up their property, right? This is what happens. This is one of the Sirah of Muhammad, volume 1, right? So let's go on. So now we will start looking at the Hanafi Sharia manual, the Hidayah. This is some of what is in the Hidayah. It's called the Commentary on the Muslim Laws. This is the major document of the Hanafi school of fiqh, and it talks of thefts which occasion amputation, right? Of the manner of cutting off the limb of a thief. If you want to learn about that, there's a chapter on it. On the manner of waging war. Yeah, Thaddeus?
I was just going to say, it looks like we have about 20 pages on how to cut someone's limb off. You know, this is, we need extensive detail on this very important religious matter. So we got 20 pages on it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It just shows you the mindset, you know.
Well, at least someone took the time to help us out with that, you know. At least someone bothered, thought of us when they did this.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
okay. Yeah, we will. Someone's asked if we can link them from the screen on Jizya. We can probably do that towards the end of the show.
Yeah,
Or
all
if you
these
can
books,
do
I will link.
it
I can link all of them. One of the places you want to look, search archive.org for all of these books that I'm referring to. Go to archive.org and search for all the PDFs there. You'll find them. I've uploaded many of these to that, and you'll find them there. They speak of plunder and the division of plunder. This is after you've made war on people. You can then remember, you can take things from people after you've plundered them. They speak of the conquests of infidels. It doesn't say here defense against it. It says the conquest of infidels, because jihad is offensive warfare. Islam is a religion of war. And here the important bit is chapter 7 of tithe and tribute, and then of jizyat or capitation tax. And of course, we have the laws concerning apostates, which is very close connected. The same laws apply to the dhimmi. Because as an apostate, he has forfeited the protection of the law. And if you are a non-Muslim, you also forfeit the protection of the law because you're not a Muslim. You're walking a tightrope. So let's look at tithe and tribute. So the term tithe in its primitive sense signifies the product of lands and the hire of slaves. So tithing in Islam, I don't know what does tithing mean in Christianity?
Tithing, you take it, Thaddeus.
So in Christianity, the tithe would be voluntary contribution, and a lot of people go with 10%. It literally means tenth. But the important thing in the Old Testament that it was the first and best of your property. But in Christianity, it's not a literal 10%. It's just the same idea that you set aside some of your time and some of your resources to give to God.
Right. So yeah, they speak of the hire of slaves, a tax upon land, or the persons of dhimmis, which is termed jizyat or capitation tax. So jizya, what do the scholars, the Islamic scholars say? So make a note of these links. I will ultimately post these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to now the verses from the hadith and of course the tafsir to show you the consistency of what happens here. So let me just change out.
Wow. A comment by Loginus of Jerusalem. The Janissary Corps was originally staffed through devrism, a system of tribute by which Christian youths were taken from the Balkan provinces, converted to Islam, and drafted into Ottoman service.
Yeah, that did happen. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to, I'm going to close this. I've now switched to my PDF because I need to go through this document at some length. Hopefully you guys can read this clearly. So this is from the tafsir. The tafsir are the binding, eventually, okay, so Muslims always give you non-binding fatwa from scholars. You can ignore those. Those are nothing. The binding fatwa, the most authoritative fatwa, made their way into the Sharia. They became orthodoxy, they became law. So these are the opinions from the greatest of the Islamic scholars that eventually became Sharia and formed the Islamic orthodoxy. Fight against those who have been given the scripture, the Jews and the Christians, and do not submit themselves to Allah through the confession until they pay the tribute, being brought low, abased. Okay, so that is Ibn Abbas. Tafsir al-Jalalain says, fight those who do not believe in Allah, for otherwise they would have believed in the Prophet. Okay, and nor do they practice the religion of truth, the one that abrogated all other religions, namely the religion of Islam. Let me see, I'm going to maximize this. I'm just going to make sure that everyone can read along with me. And namely, the Jews and the Christians, until they pay the jizya tribute, the annual tax imposed upon them, being subdued, being made submissive and compliant to the authority of Islam. So we will start to learn that there is a consistency from every single Islamic source. Every single one agrees on the same thing, from academic sources to Islamic sources. Then I'll jump back into the Hidayah, and you will see that it says exactly the same, except it gives you the actual laws. So Allah commands his servants who are pure in religion to expel the idolaters who are filthy in the religious sense. Idolaters were no longer allowed to go near the mosque. The mushrikun are impure, that's you. Unless it was a servant or one of the people of the Dhimma, Umar wrote to his governors to prevent Jews and Christians from entering the masjids of Muslims. The mushrikun are impure. This ayah indicates that idolaters are impure and that the believers are pure. The believer does not become impure. So in other words, a Muslim cannot become impure no matter what his deeds. As long as he believes, he can do anything. If you fear poverty, Allah will enrich you out of his bounty. And they became rich through the money they took from the dhimmis. And if you fear poverty, Allah will enrich you from other resources. And they feel themselves subdued. This means this will be your compensation for the closed markets that you feared would result from war. Allah compensated them for the losses they incurred because they severed ties with idolaters by the jizya they earned from the people of the book. Muslims are to make their money from subjugated non-Muslims, Christians and Jews. Allah compensates Muslims for their money, for their losses, by the amount of jizya they took from people of the Dhimma, the order to fight people of the scriptures until they give the jizya. So fight those who believe not in Allah, the people of the scripture, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. When they disbelieved in Muhammad, they had no beneficial faith. They call that fasid. In other words, our faith as Christians is fasid, meaning it is null, it is void, it is worthless, in the sense that it has no impact on the world. It is disregarded. It is something less substantial than air. In any messenger, what the messengers brought, rather they followed their religions because this conformed with their ideas, their lusts, and the ways of their forefathers, not because they are Allah's law and religion. Had they been believers in the true religions, that faith would have directed them to believe in Muhammad, because all the prophets gave the good news of Muhammad's advent and commanded them to obey and follow Muhammad when he was sent. They disbelieved in him, even though he is the mightiest of all the prophets. They do not follow the religion of earlier prophets because these religions came from Allah, but because these suit their desires and lusts. Fight against those who believe not in Allah. This ayah, this honorable ayah, was revealed with the order to fight the people of the book. After the pagans were defeated, the people entered Allah's religion in large numbers, and the Arabian Peninsula was secured under the Muslims' control. Allah commanded his messengers to fight the people of the scriptures, the Jews and the Christians, on the 9th year of Hijrah. He prepared his army to fight the Romans and called the people to jihad. He didn't call them to self-improvement or to eat more salads. This is fighting and warfare. He collected an army. Paying jizya is a sign of kufr and disgrace. Allah said, until they pay the jizya, if they choose not to embrace Islam with willing submission, in defeat and subservience, they must be disgraced, humiliated, and belittled. Muslims are not allowed to honor the people of the Dhimma or elevate them above Muslims, for they are miserable, disgraced, and humiliated. I'll pause there for a moment. This will be done soon, but any comments from anyone?
Oh, I'm just wonderful comments. Have a browse down there and have a look. I mean, it's been really, really informative. Even the fact that this is absolutely a comprehensive legislation, if you like, what to do when they conquer. I mean, have the Jews got anything like that? Do the Roman Catholics have a system like this? This is about jihad, this war. And to know that this is actually in their text, very detailed, so they know what to do. Is it any wonder why ISIS were doing what they were doing?
ISIS is 100% Orthodox Sunni Islam. They are perfect Muslims. So
right.
I'm just, go on, Thaddeus.
So there's an interesting comment from Villainous. He says, so there is no absolute justice in Islam, as Muslims can get away with anything. Therefore, there is no need for the redemption of Christ.
We will actually do that. As we go through the Sharia, you will actually learn what the stipulation is there, because murder is bad, but you know what? Allowing non-Muslims to tempt you away from Islam is even worse. So murder the Christians, because Allah will forgive that because you're doing a good deed. So yeah, if you meet them on a road, force them to its narrowest alley. Right? This relates to Christians. They ensured their continued humiliation, degradation, and disgrace. When you Muslims came to us, we requested safety for ourselves, children, property, and the followers of our religion. We made a condition on ourselves that we will neither erect in our areas a monastery, church, or a sanctuary for a monk, nor restore any place of worship that needs restoration. Those Muslims who come as guests will enjoy boarding and food for 3 days. We will respect Muslims. We will move from the places we sit if they choose to sit there. We will refrain from erecting crosses on the outside of our churches. We will not sound the bells in our churches or buy servants who are captured by Muslims. What? Muslims didn't capture slaves. What do you mean, bigot? This Muslim actually is lying about Islam. My gosh, who is this guy?
Right. Yeah, they want us to think that, oh, that's not true.
Ibn Kathir, oh my God, Ibn Kathir is a Islamophobic bigot. Oh my God. This is crazy. Okay. These are the conditions that we set against ourselves and the followers of our religion in return for safety and protection. If we break any of these, blah, 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 you are allowed to do with us what you're allowed of people of defiance and rebellion. And the final one, the last one, from Dudi, a modern scholar, very influential 20th century scholar of Islam. Christians and Jews were guilty of shirk. Their profession of belief in Allah was meaningless. They did not really believe in the hereafter, in spite of the fact that they believed in resurrection. The Jews and the Christians have polluted their faiths. The second reason why jihad should be waged against them is that they did not adopt the law sent down by Allah through Muhammad. This is the aim of jihad with the Jews and the Christians. It is not to force them to become Muslims and adopt the Islamic way of life. They should be forced to pay jizya in order to put an end to their independence and supremacy. They should not remain rulers and sovereigns in the land, in their own lands, he means. These powers must be taken away from them by the followers of Islam, who should assume the sovereignty and lead others towards the right way. They should become their subjects and they must pay jizya. Jizya is paid by non-Muslims who live in an Islamic state in exchange for the security and protection. They willingly become the subjects of the believers, the subjects of the Muslims. Who here doesn't want to be the subject of a Muslim? Raise your hand. Who performed the
It's
duty
so
of
disgusting.
the only reason I'm raising my hand is to
Absolutely.
slap someone in the face. So
Yeah, it's humiliation, isn't it? So
they willingly
satanic, so
yeah.
evil.
Who perform the duty. So they willingly become the subjects of the believers who perform the duty of the vice regents of Allah on earth. Allah will punish us in the afterlife. The Muslims will punish us in this life. At first, this command applied only to the Jews and the Christians, and then to the Zoroastrians also. Unanimously, the companions unanimously applied this rule. And just by sheer coincidence, Muhammad had 12 companions. I wonder who else had 12 companions. Let me ponder. Can anyone think? Anyone? I'm going to get into that subject. Oh my gosh. Anyway, the companions unanimously applied this rule to all the non-Muslim nations outside Arabia. This is jizya. The Muslims have been feeling apologetic. So of which the Muslims have been feeling apologetic during the last 2 centuries of their degeneration. And there's still some people who continue to apologize for it. The way of Allah is straight and clear and does not stand in need of an apology to the rebels against Allah. That's you. The Muslims should feel proud of such a humane law as that of the jizya. And when I get into the law, you're going to see how humane it is. The Islamic State offers them protection if they agree to live as dhimmis by paying jizya. It cannot allow that they should remain supreme rulers in any place and establish wrong ways and impose them on others. It is the duty of true Muslims to exert their utmost to bring an end to their wicked rule. Jizya is the price of the freedom in following their erroneous ways, their wrong ways. And it's a yearly reminder to them that they have been deprived of the honor of paying zakat in the way of Allah and forced to pay jizya instead as a price of following the ways of error. I'll stop there. Any comments, questions?
Oh, I like that. This is the price of freedom. Yeah. What freedom do you have? You can't build a church. You can't read your Bible. You can't walk on the good side of the street. You can't have a house that's taller than a Muslim house. You know, such freedom.
It's
Such
up to
humane laws.
humiliation. Gote Aisha's Quran says, an ex-Muslim I personally know from Albania told me about Ottoman Turkish rule and forceful conversion of Albanians to Islam. How come so many people forget this history, you know? And history, I feel, you know, it possibly will repeat itself if we're not more informed right now. This is what they want, right? The Enlightenment. They want to bring back the Enlightenment.
The thing is, this is Orthodox Islam. Muslims don't want you to know this. That's why you are wasting your time chasing your tail by talking about the Quran. They don't want us looking at this. Now, This is the tafsir. We can go to the hadith and the hadith say the very same thing. Then we can go to the surah. The surah says the same thing. Then we can go to academic sources that say the same thing. Then we can go to the Sharia and it says the very same thing. There is no discrepancy. This is unanimous.
There is one exception.
It's like Nazi Germany, but for Islam.
So again?
The exception is YouTube comments. You know, all the great scholars on YouTube telling us.
Oh, yeah. You're right. The great scholars in the YouTube comment section. I mean, they know less Islam than I do. I mean, most of us know more than they do about their own religion.
Wow. Gabriel says churches and castles were built on hills so people can go hide themselves and protect from their attacks. This is terrible.
Yeah.
This is history. This is what took place.
Yeah, so the overwhelming evidence, I think, points in one direction only. I'm just going to close this, and I'm going to look at a few. I'm not going to look at every one. I'm going to look at some hadiths, and then I will go step into the Adaya for a few minutes, and then we'll call it, and we can discuss. Because the aim is to keep this to 90 minutes. So here we've got Sahih Bukhari. I've been ordered to fight against the people, and then blah, 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 right? We've got the same here. I've been ordered to fight the people till they say none has the right to be worshipped but Allah. So the very same message, right? This one is, I have here, I don't know, something like 90 different hadith, I think. So this document doesn't load very well. This thing runs out of memory when it tries to load. But it's just hadith after hadith that says the same. And some of them are as egregious as the tafsir. But you will notice all of these, actually, let me just open up this screen. Yeah, there's so many of them that Adobe Acrobat is actually suffering under load. So here they speak also, now in the hadith, they speak furthermore of the fact that the jizya applied to farmers. Farmers were required to pay half of their crop every year to the Muslims, just give it. And then that's how Muslims were basically earning their wages, from taking half the money from Christians and Jews and taking half of the farming produce. And therefore they were lazy, they didn't work because they got their money from their subjects. That's how Islam sustained itself. And when they weren't getting jizya, they could no longer sustain their empires. So they speak a lot about the Jews. The Prophet said, he who fights with that Allah's word should be superior, fights in Allah's cause. That's all about fighting. And they send people to Bahrain to fetch the jizya. And, you know, I'm not afraid of your poverty, but I'm afraid that you will lead a life of luxury because of collecting jizya.
Wow.
And that's what they did. Went to Bahrain to collect the jizya tax. They took the jizya from the Magyans of Bahrain, and he took it from the Magyans of Persia, and Uthman took it from the Berbers. All of these nations were once not Muslim. They were all conquered. Now,
yeah, conquered peoples, yeah.
Yeah, Umar imposed a jizya tax of 4 dinars on those living where gold was the currency, and 40 dirhams on those living where silver was the currency. In addition, that to provide for the Muslims and receive them as guests for 3 days. And it just goes on. There's just confirmation of all of this. Jizya is imposed on the people of the book to humble them. A tenth is taken from what they invest in such a trade. So not only that, they were taxed 10% on any business that they did. When they went to the stores, when they bought anything, there were 10% of them was also then taken. So notice, fight against those who believe in Allah, who disbelieve in Allah, make a holy war. I thought, Sahib, Muslim, oh my God, Muslim is also an Islamophobic bigot against Islam. He's calling jihad a holy war. What is wrong with this man? Right? Fight them to 3 courses of action. Invite them to accept Islam. Invite them to migrate from their lands. In other words, tell them to get lost and we'll take your land, thank you. And if they refuse to accept Islam, demand from them the jizya. And then he goes on, because Islam is a religion of peace. When you lay siege to a fort and the besieged appeal to you for protection, do not accord to them the guarantee of Allah and his prophet. Here's that passage that I couldn't remember from the Hiyal episode. Look how they lie. When you lay siege to a fort and the besieged appeal to you for protection, do not accord to them the guarantee of Allah and his prophet, but accord them your own guarantee and the guarantee of your companions, for it is a lesser sin that the security given by you or your companions will be disregarded. In other words, you'll break your promise, than that the security granted in the name of Allah be violated. You can break your promises. So yeah, so when they tell you, well, sure, come out, you know, we've surrounded you, we're not going to rape your women, we're not going to steal your stuff, we're not going to kill you, I give my oath. Well, hey, but you don't believe that. Do not let them come out in accordance with his command, Allah's command, but do so at your own command, for you do not know whether or not you will be able to carry out Allah's promise with regards to them.
This is damning. Vilena says, maybe Bob and Hafsa should start refuting the reliance of the traveler at Speaker's Corner. And then Marcus said, Vilanas, I think Lloyd made such an important point here. Sonia backs it up. It is this whole framework of Khilafah we should be talking about. The blueprints are reading and built into Islam.
Yeah, look, you guys don't know how bad it gets. You honestly have no idea. It is, however bad you think it is worse. You guys, I promise you, you guys don't know Islam. You don't. Wait for the stuff that I'm going to be talking about down the line in the next few months. I mean, it's shocking.
You know, when I talk about Islam on my channel, it's mostly in the context of Bible prophecy, and I run the risk of sounding like an Islamophobe, as I've been labeled. But when you present these facts, it confirms my suspicions, but also it's a warning, isn't it? It's a warning that we're being fooled, And we keep going around this circle about debating the Quran. I think we need to pass that stage now because it's been done. And also look at this Khilafah system, the jizya, the dhimmi status, because this is what they still want to do. They haven't finished. Even Turkey wants to invade Syria, invade Jerusalem. Ultimately, they want Jerusalem for the capital of the Khilafah. So this
They
is
need to kill all
serious
the Jews,
stuff,
but
you know?
that's, yeah. You know, Thaddeus, thoughts from you? I mean, you're right, Sonia. But, yeah.
Yeah, I think that the important cat stepped on the mute button.
Was it
one
cat
important-
stepping on your Quran? You said what?
No, the cat stepped on my mute button. As I was saying, that it's important to remember that, you know, this is considered merciful because it only applies to Jews and Christians and maybe the Zoroastrians. For everyone else, you know, Hindus, Buddhists, adherents to the traditional religions of Arabia, Northern Africa, whatever, everyone else they came in contact was simply killed. They didn't have a choice. You know, it was convert or die. It wasn't convert, pay the jizya or die. And
right. The difficulty is, what do you do with this? What do we do knowing that there's such a comprehensive system? How do we respond?
And then the other thing I want to point out is you sometimes see Muslim apologists say, you know, oh, here's a source of this guy saying, don't kill the Jews and Christians. And then you look it up, and then in context, he's saying, stop killing them. We need their money.
Right.
Yeah. You know, all Islamic apologetics are attempts to deflect away from the Sirah and from the Sharia, especially the Sharia, because Muhammad is the new Jesus. Muhammad is Jesus, in fact. And the previous Jesus, which they consider the fake Jesus, our Jesus, is the man that came to foretell the coming of Muhammad. But yeah, that's a story for another day. Look, once we do part 2 of this, I'll have to talk about jihad because the prime doctrine of Islam is jihad. So yeah, I will end up here. I think I've made my point with this and go back to the Hidayah. Then I can do another 5 minutes of this and then we'll open it up for discussion.
Yeah, this has been really good. I mean, Marcus again says the whole mendacity built into Islam is dangerous. It allows you to dehumanize your fellow man and provides a whole system for doing so while living in ritualized fear. I mean, yeah, what do we do with this? We have so many people who believe this. I mean, millions, right, of believers who are willingly joining jihad in the Middle East. They have these books. They know exactly what you're talking about here today. But we'll have the Yahyas of the world come here and leave these deflective comments, right? The fact that they consider Muhammad as Jesus is a shock. It's a shock to the system.
Look, I know I say things that are pretty, what seem rather off the wall, but I read these books. I spend sometimes 8 hours a day reading these books. And I'm not kidding about that, right?
Yeah.
Islam is Gnosticism. It is a Gnostic religion. It is Gnosticism. Right, and Muhammad is painted as the Messiah. As I said, Muhammad is the King Messiah. He is the Shiloh. He is foretold by Jacob in Genesis.
Yeah, that's what you were saying earlier. Oh my God, I'm so shocked still with it because I'm thinking biblically, well, how does this all fit in? And I know where it fits in.
Muhammad
this
receives
is the Islamic Illuminati, isn't it?
Well, that's in Ghazali's book, the Niche of Lights. They say that they are the Sufis are the perfect Illuminati. So,
Marcus wrote, this makes sense why the Sunnah arrives later. What do you do once you have subjugated and conquered your neighbors? What do you do? Then you start to obsess about Muhammad and the right way of being. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to talk about Muhammad. I'm going to show you guys very soon once we do a show a Muhammad you've never heard of, a Muhammad you've never seen before. So, and the one that Muslims don't talk about because it's secret. They must never talk about it. But I'm going to, because you guys are shy. I'm going to help you guys out.
My friend Maya hi Maya. Maya said, I'm curious to know how they manage to recruit new people into their religion who are imprisoned or disenfranchised. They are playing on the hearts of so many gullible, vulnerable people. I think, yeah, that is true. But then there are so many who actually believe what they follow. They really want it. They're ready for war. And yet here we are, you know, wishy-washy, tolerant West, and we've just been taken for a ride.
Yeah, no. So look, let me do 2 or 3 minutes of this, and then we'll.
Before you finish the presentation, if I could add something on that.
Yeah, sure.
So I've done some research on religious conversion statistics, and the number of people who convert to Islam is extremely low. It's approximately 0.1% of people raised as Christian in the West convert to Islam. The reason Islam is growing in the West is due to immigration. It has nothing to do with conversion.
Yeah.
Basically, no one at all is converting to Islam. And the number of people leaving Islam is greater than the number converting into it.
Good point. And 70% of the converts relapse and leave Islam within 2 to 3 years.
They realize, right, what happened, just like Brother Joseph Colden. Check his channel out as well. But thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Is there something else you wanted to show there, Lloyd?
Let me do a couple of minutes out of the Hidayah, just a few minutes.
Yeah,
and then
come on.
we'll,
All right.
So let's go on to the second page. So there are 41 pages of this specifically in the Hidayah. So this tells us we are enjoined, and that's a legal term, we're required to make war upon the infidels of Arabia till they embrace the faith. Omar subdued Iraq. He conquered Egypt and imposed tribute upon the inhabitants. And then he imposed tribute upon the people of Syria. The Imam, whenever he subdues a territory by force of arms, is entitled to establish inhabitants in their possessions and impose tribute upon their lands and capitation tax upon their persons. So jihad is about conquest. Islam was spread through conquest.
Yeah.
Now, lands which the Imam subdues by force of arms are subject to tribute. The necessity that something be imposed and deducted from the subsistence of infidels. So they speak here of that we have to fund them. And this bears the construction of a punishment. So jizya bears the construction of a punishment. It is a sort of hardship, a tax upon tribute land being due, although he would not have cultivated it. So even if you're a farmer and you own land, even though you haven't cultivated it, if there was war, you still owe them the same tax because you own that land. They've given you the privilege of keeping your land and you have to pay for it. Mecca is exempted from this rule as the Prophet conquered that territory by force of arms. So I thought Islam was spread by kind words and good deeds, but it seems not. So let me continue to, okay. Tribute land has to yield 2 crops in 1 year, and they've got to take half. All right. So of jizyat and capitation tax. So I will read a couple of pages only. Jizyat or capitation tax is of 2 kinds. The second species is that which the Imam himself imposes where he conquers infidels. This is, again, offensive war. Capitation tax is due only in lieu of destruction. Destruction here means death. Capitation, so it's you pay it or you die. Capitation tax serves as an aid to the troops, the Islamic army of conquest. Capitation tax is due in lieu of assistance with person and property. Because you will not convert to Islam and fight in jihad against non-Muslims, you pay this to make sure that the army is able to sustain itself to go and do just that. Capitation tax is to be imposed because this is mentioned in the Quran. How can this author of the Sharia manual not know that the Quran doesn't have anything like this in it? This guy, seriously, Islam is Islamophobic. All the major scholars of Islam are Islamophobic. Like, what the heck? Didn't you guys read the YouTube comment section?
Right. This is why this kind of stuff needs to be more exposed, because where they're going to hide, right? We know what they really believe.
Yeah,
what they really
this is
think.
the Sharia. This is the highest, most ultimate law in Islam. There is nothing higher, not even the Quran. It is imposed as a return from the mercy and forbearance shown by the Muslims as a substitute for that destruction which is due upon infidels. For not worshipping Allah, for not becoming a Muslim, you are supposed to be killed.
Wow. This is like the triads of Hong Kong on steroids.
Namely, that assistance which every subject of the Muslim government is by the law enjoined to afford towards carrying on their war with the infidels. I'll stop
That
there.
is an amazing question, Lloyd. Why did this scholar not know this his eternal Quran? This is Marcus.
So again, where? Oh, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. The only people, as you know, that know Islam are in the YouTube comment section.
Yeah.
I mean,
Snub.
oh God, they will deny every single source. I mean, of course, Maya, Islam is Islamophobic. Read the Sharia.
When
So look, I'll pause here. I mean, this is enough.
Villainous earlier made a comment saying, Lloyd, take it easy because it will break your heart reading this poison.
Dude, this stuff is filthy. It is filthy. Honestly, you don't understand. It is filthy. And it's shocking. And I'm just getting started. You have no idea. I have a ton of research work that I could do a dozen shows easy. I could do 24 shows easy. I've got all the research work.
It's really
So, yeah.
telling though, isn't it? This is the other side of the coin, you see. If we keep going on about the Quran and, the boring old stuff and yet expose this, that is, this is what they don't want us to talk about. So we ought to talk about it more. The
Exactly.
next Bible study that I was going to do is going to be regarding Israel and the land and why Islam feels it owns it and why it feels it's the rightful owner. I'm going to talk about that in my next video. But yeah, this is the Antichrist system very much in place of Jesus.
Islam
and
is
his kingdom.
explicitly, we'll do shows on this. Islam is explicitly anti-Christian, explicitly anti-Jesus. People moan about the Jews and the Talmud and they don't believe in Jesus. Dude, you just don't know Islam well enough. Seriously, the Jews are amateurs at this. If what you claim is true, the Jews are amateurs at this game. Try Islam.
Yeah, it's completely sophisticated, comprehensive system. It's a system. I always say it's a system. It's not a religion. Far be it, it's a religion. It just adds the religious side to it to give it any credibility. But yeah, it's the whole system we're talking about here.
It is a system. The deen, as they call it, is a system. Islam doesn't call itself a religion. Nowhere does Islam call itself a religion. In English, they do because it's a convenient term. And it's also a term that is deceptive. It calls itself a system. And part of that deen, and I've read the definition on the show before, part of that system is the subjugation of non-Muslims.
I didn't have any Muslim apologists in the chat today.
No, that's interesting.
I have blocked a few before earlier, but we'll see. Maybe after the video is uploaded, and they'll come. It'll be interesting to see what they say. They probably won't say. What can they say? What can they say? What sources can they bring to refute their own sources?
Well, they will lie. They're going to, and they're going to come up with some very sophisticated lies. Wait for it.
Yeah, just
Marcus is asking you a question, Lloyd. Can you ask Lloyd if he heard the theory of the Byzantines infusing the Ghassanid tribes with a Gnostic form of Christianity called monophysitism?
Not really.
That
I
was
haven't
a
looked in.
mouthful.
No, look, I'm busy. Look, I will be doing. I have been preparing some preliminary notes on the subject. But no, I don't know enough about the subject. I can tell you Islam is a Gnostic religion. I will say that.
Yeah.
But I don't know much more than what I've told you.
Yeah, we'll always have somebody talking about the Noahide laws. What does this person say? Thea, Sharia law 666, Islamic law 666, attacks per English Gematria, but also Noahide. Noahide laws are not a threat. It's been made to seem it's a threat by the anti-Jewish crowd, but they're not a threat. They're very biblical laws. However, the people who wish that Noahide laws were law are not a threat.
They call it, look, for instance, this is Islamic propaganda from people who hate the Bible and who hate God, because the Noahide laws, 6 of the Noahide laws are in the 10 Commandments. Okay, 6 of the laws of Noah. And in fact, the proper term is the covenant of Noah, the covenant of God with Noah. That is the correct term for that, the covenant of Noah. There are 4 major covenants in the Bible. God's covenant with Noah after the flood, God's covenant with Abraham, God's covenant with David, and God's covenant with Jesus Christ. 4, and Noah is the first of them. 6 of those laws are in the 10 Commandments. So please tell me that the 10 Commandments are 60% evil. Okay, go ahead. And all of those laws are just natural law. The last one is to establish courts of justice and to establish a just government. Okay? They are, do not lie, do not steal, do not commit adultery. So those are the Noahide laws. And also do not tear the limb from a living animal and eat its flesh and drink its blood. So if you feel that's a good idea, go ahead and do that, Mr. Vampire. But stealing, not committing adultery, those are in the 10 Commandments, okay? So people have a problem with the Noahide laws, have a problem with 70% of the 10 Commandments.
But they don't have a problem with the subjugation, abrogation that Islam offers, you see.
It's okay when Islam does it. You don't want to be Islamophobic.
Yeah, I'm going to do more videos on that Noahide stuff because it keeps popping up. I told you that it keeps popping up. I will do it again. I've done those videos before. If you'd like to see them, they're on my playlist. And yeah, very easy to debunk. It's nothing but
you don't understand, guys. I am going to do a show on, I have been collecting what I hope is the definitive takedown of the nonsense that good Christians for Allah, good Islamic Christians for Allah are saying about the laws of Noah. You are then defaming the Old Testament. You're defaming Noah, who was a righteous man who followed God. And unfortunately, the only problem is that in the Old Testament, those laws aren't explicitly defined, not all of them. But in the New Testament, 4 of them are discussed by James, the brother of Jesus, and Paul and Peter, and they discuss them and they say, well, should we impose these laws of Noah on the people? And they agreed to do just that. So then you are calling God, Noah, and the apostles of the church evil.
What they've done, they've just grabbed a fringe, and you can say that with the Talmud, is the fringe element, and said they've based their whole theory on this because of a fringe view. But on the Islamic side, you've got millions upon millions of people who believe this. They've got a text, they've got a library, very sort of precise, comprehensive system. You can't compete with that, you know. It's a deflection tactic, and it doesn't work.
So Thaddeus, do you have a comment on what I just said about the laws of Noah?
No, I don't really have any comment on that. I don't understand it. I don't know why this has become a thing.
It's become a thing.
It's not like it's any. It's really any different than any laws that people already use in the West. So I don't know.
No, it's 6 of them are explicitly in the 10 Commandments, and the 7th is actually in Romans, where they speak of forming government, where the gifts of the Spirit, government, and justice, because God is just and he wants justice, that is covered explicitly in Romans. So all of these are entirely in accordance with Old Testament and New Testament doctrine. So these are really bad theologians telling you things, and do me a favor, stay away from the stupid.
Yeah, focus on the real problem.
Well,
how long was this program? So it's over an hour and a half. That's good.
Hour and 20 minutes so far. We've only done an hour and 20 minutes.
Is it an hour and 20 minutes on here? Okay, well, that's good. Any questions in the chat? Truly, there are many deflection tactics in Islamic apologetics. Yeah. Right. I had no idea there were such people. Good Christians for Allah. Say what now, says Maya Thomas.
No, if you listen to these supposed Christians who are making these claims, they are repeating Islamic propaganda, right? And they're supposed to be Christians, and they are attacking the foundations of the Bible. They're attacking the very first covenant of God with man, right?
Yes, it is just a pathetic conspiracy theory, right? But you wouldn't believe the amount of people that follow this crowd. It's really shocking, really.
As I said, I've got the notes together. I can actually show you what they are, and it's extensive. It is long, and I will do, hopefully we can plan a show, and I will do the definitive
that would be good to do that, because I've spoken on it. It was read, the Noahide stuff. I think even Dr. Brown did that as well, didn't he? Michael Brown. But no, people don't want to listen to reason. They want to keep going on about it.
Yeah, look, I like Michael Brown, but he needs to be a little bit more academic in that sense. I mean, you know me, I like to have my notes and go point by point, and I think I would prefer if he does some of that. He's very passionate, but I would like him to do like a somewhat more, like really detailed refutation, point by point.
Point by point, yeah. That makes it feel easy to follow as well. But I think if there's no questions at the minute, I think that's it then, you guys. What should we do? We can reschedule something in the near future. That was a really good show. Thank you so much for being here, Thaddeus and Lloyd. And that presentation was brilliant. It's shocking. There's so much in that I didn't know. I knew about the system of Khilafah in a nutshell, very basic. The idea behind it is to conquer, subjugate, and dominate. That's it. But the detail that they have is shocking, isn't it? Detailed, how to chop off hands, how to actually subjugate people. This is horrendous. It's awful.
We could do a show just on the chapter of chopping off of hands.
Oh, disgusting, isn't it? Oh,
the video, the
thank you
correct
so
way to
much.
chop off
Thank
someone's
you.
hand.
Thaddeus, have you got any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think that Marcus made a good comment that I think is good to end it on. He says, truly, there are many deflection tactics in Islamic apologetics. I think that's a good idea to keep in mind. A lot of these people who show up in the chat speaking nonsense, they know they're speaking nonsense. All they really want to do is waste your time. So I say, don't play along. If they, give them 1 or 2 chances to reply back with something real. And if they don't, well, they're just trying to waste your time.
Yeah. I've been doing that. I've been applying the 3-strike rule now for a while, and it seems to work, because we don't want distraction. We want people to learn, argue by all means, put forth your arguments, of course, but not childish behavior, like, oh, what's that over there, to distract you. So I hope this was helpful. Hope everyone enjoyed it. It was really helpful for me, for my own studies, and I'll be back again, hopefully, by the end of this week with the video. And also, friends, please show some support to Brother Lloyd and Thaddeus's channel. Go and hit the subscribe button, watch and share their content because it's really good stuff. And it just helps us get this message out and to gain a momentum because, there's not much of this information out there. And I don't know anyone else that's actually exposing Islam as a system the way Brother Lloyd is doing at the moment. I don't know. I can't think of anyone at the minute. But thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Brother Lloyd and Thaddeus. And hopefully we'll get together soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.